Hello again, Year 10 students. So this section is going to cover from page 200 to about 218, I think. And make sure you're ready because we're going to get right into it. So here we have, remember we've just had the whipping of the prisoner who stole the potatoes, and now we move Silk comes back to from Rose Hill and returns to the settlement. And at this part, page 201, we have a really important part where basically Silk discovers Rook's secret, which is not really a secret, but basically Silk asks Rook, what have you been up to? Oh, Silk asks Rook, what have you been up to? And Rook then has to kind of debate how to answer. He must tell, otherwise what up till now had been simply private would take on the dangerous power of a secret. So he had to tell but minimize. To reveal, but reveal something so small and so dull that Silk would not pause to examine it. But while he was planning this and assembling the words and talking through his strategy on how to say this, Silk was fiddling with things on the table, and he came across the blue notebooks, these two notebooks, and he realizes that Rook has been making quite a study of the native tongue through the grammatical forms and the vocabulary. And Rook is cursing himself for not hiding them properly, and he didn't have, because Gardiner and Silk were both gone, his friends essentially, he had forgotten to be careful, and he didn't write it for other people to see. He never pictured another eye looking at those words, and he couldn't think how quickly enough to say, no, Silk, don't open it. He tries to dissuade Silk. Oh, it's not very interesting. It's very preliminary. And then he redirects. Were there natives at Rose Hill? What? Any encounters? And for a moment he thought that this ruse had worked. But then Silk starts telling a story. And this is interesting. I've written early signs there. There's early signs of tension and conflict because there's a hut that's been burned to the ground. There was a man who's been hoeing ground who was attacked a spear that pierced the ground between his feet, but he wasn't struck. He says, look, there's trouble brewing, but what can we do when the attackers will not let themselves be seen? The governor plans to send another 10 men and one of the small cannons, which many would say would be overkill. And so that juxtaposition of spears and shields, we had spears with muskets. Here we have spears with a cannon. So we go over then to page 203. Silk keeps looking at the pages of the journals. It says, no, this is actually a considerable achievement. You must learn not to hide your light under a bushel, my friend. Don't be so modest. And he leans back. Then Silk here tries to persuade Rook to include an appendix or chapter in his story on language. And he's like, what are you planning to do with grammatical forms? Are you going to publish? Silk was moving too fast for Rook. He is impulsive, he's bubbly and life of the party, a quick decision maker, whereas Rook is measured, he's composed. He would think things through before making any decision. But anyway, so Silk was putting pressure on Rook to publish the journals as part of his story, as an appendix. Publish this? Well, in that way, your labours would find a wider audience. So for Silk, the only thing he can think is that you would write for an audience. And how different Silk was from him, Rook thought. Silk could imagine no use for words other than reaching an audience. Why would a man labour, if not to publish it? Until recently, he would have viewed things the same way. He would have leapt at the idea of his endeavours having a public readership. Yeah, so until recently, he also would have wanted to publish and wanted to have this discovery of the language give him acclaim and respect, honour and position. He reflects in deciding to learn the language of the natives. He had thought just to take a single step to write down the words. But now he saw how far he had travelled from the world he once shared with Silk. Tagarin seemed to have led the way down some other road altogether. So that introduction of Tagaran into his life has led to a complete new self almost being discovered. Camera, the friend, this self who plays joyfully, who wrestles and acts out vocabulary and laughs, and like the child inside of Rook that he never was allowed to experience. And Silk, so Silk is maybe Silk is feeling like, oh, is Rook trying to be my competition in publishing this? I don't know. But when Rook says that, well, it's not very much interest and maybe not an extensive number of readers for this, then something in Silk relaxes. And he agrees. No, not much general interest. But then it occurs to me, Rook, Silk says, as if just arriving at the thought, almost like it's a piece of theatre, like he's planning and 10 steps ahead and he's planted this seed. It occurs to me that we might be able to enter into a partnership, you and I. What say you add your vocabularies and grammatical forms to my own journal? So this is published in my book with full credit as an appendix. And you will be able to have a proportion of the amount on a pro rata basis. So that means basically a percentage, however many pages, he gets that many percentage of the profits. And Rook still is like, no, but says nothing. And they're having a joking, friendly conversation, but underneath there's very real tension. And you can see that. So Rook says, well, I know what pro rata means, Silk, thank you. Why, Rook, Silk's jocularity was a little forced. You haggling with me? I'll give you a fair share. Something in Rook caught a light, maybe with annoyance or anger, the way a twist of tinder did, a quick white flare. It's not about my share, Silk. I'm not haggling with you over the pounds, shillings and pence. These 2 notebooks recorded the best of his life. Perhaps he would be obliged to share them, but they would never be a matter of profit. His ambition and intention is not to make money for them. It's almost like he feels that would be immoral because it's the best of his life, and that wasn't his reason going into it. And so Silk then reads this interaction, more details, and this joke that was Tagaran saying that joke of I will not become white. And notice at the bottom of 206, what I thought was really interesting here was Rook explains that, no, it was spoken in jest. We both spoken in jest. It was a joke that white people think their skin superior. The white people? He was speaking as if he were not one of them. So he identified with the natives. You can tell that here because he's saying the white people, and you can start to see, just like the Warrabora tea that he drinks, and that like he loves he's starting to identify with and almost emotionally becoming part of this community. He explains it. Well, it was a joke. She's such a clever child, and it's like his words he then questions. He wrote as in despair, and like he was supposed to say that she was acting. It was feigned, acted, pretended, but then Silk isn't really listening. Silk is just saying, "Wow, you have made considerable headway." And this sentence that is, I take more of it from cold. Rook's tone of regret is evident here, that it was his own arrogance as a man of silence to so precisely written down every detail of that small event, so charged with delicate feeling, stupidity too, to have carefully formed every letter in his clear hand so that any eye in the world could read it. A child, you say? I hesitate to contradict you, my friend, but listen to this. And so there's this debate, there's this discussion that he records, and where are we? 207. So come to 208, yeah. And so he reads this conversation, and Silk's interpretation of it is that it's sexual. He sexualizes this interaction that he reads. His animated face was full of surprise, admiration, and could it be something like envy? My word, but you are ahead of the rest of us here. Mrs. Butcher's beauties not enough for you? Our assumption is that Mrs. Butcher's beauties are prostitutes. What a sly dog you are. So that the sexual innuendo here. A sly dog? And Rook doesn't even understand here. What could he be talking about? And then he did. He heard the words again in Silk's voice and had a picture of Tagaran, some leering, grotesque Tagaran flaunting herself at him. And he flushed, and a wave of heat rose from his neck, his face, his ears, his scalp. No. And then Silk thinks it all a joke. Quiet, Mr. Rook, and his little friend Tagaran. But Rook is like insisting on becoming calm. He's talking to himself and, no, you misunderstand here. She was not speaking to me, but to another child. And he was explaining too much. Silk was watching, smiling, his legs crossed. And basically, through the reading of it, all his interactions with Tagaran have been interpreted badly. One of them has proved herself to be an excellent tutor of the language. One of them. It was to protect Tagaran, but it was a betrayal. Tagaran was not one of any of them. She was herself, unique in every particle. My dear Rook, Silk said, at his most urbane. It's like sophisticated, civilized. There is no need to explain. We are both men of the world. And that's this assumption there that, like, it is a sexual thing. Men of the world. If he'd have been a man of the world, he would have seen how those words could be read. He would never have made this mistake if he was actually a man of the world. In Silk's mind, there could be no intimacy with a native girl that was not physical. How can I attempt to persuade him otherwise, Rook thought, when I myself do not understand and have no word for that intimacy? And I think partly that's Rook is brilliant at languages, but not so great at language. I guess it's a hard distinction, but he understands how to create language, how to learn a language, how to break it down into its structure and forms, but not necessarily how to express words for deep concepts. And this intimacy, I think we can see, is a familial. It's like almost fatherly affection, familial love, but he just doesn't understand it enough to be able to even speak about it. And he'd lived in a place that seemed so different as to be inviolable, unable to be violated. And it was like he and Tagaran floated in some corner of the cosmos in which the impossible could unfold. Now the new iron laws for time and place were asserting themselves. And I've written here, iron laws. Iron is rigid, strict, and inflexible. And that's going to link to some of the imagery of the British imperial machine, which is like rigid, inflexible. Okay? And not speaking made things worse. He could see that. It made things look secretive, furtive, when there's actually nothing to hide. They have an artless charm, the girls, I'll grant you, Silk said, and an admirable lack of coquetry, flirting, basically. But, Rook, as a friend, might I just utter a word of warning? Yeah? You might be careful because, well, the natives are, well, the governor's concerned. Those attacks are improved. Like, basically, I think it's a warning. Don't get too close to the natives. And Rook says, well, that's kind of you to speak as a friend. Kind, but what could Silk know? Reading his words through a lens of prurience. That's a really hard to say word. Basically it means sexualized or sexuality, a sexual lens. And making guesses that were so wrong as to be sickening. Okay? And basically, now this situation, he feels, is too late to mend. Actually, I'm going to stop there because I think it's probably enough. I was going to go all the way to the next section as well, which is another interaction with Tagaran and Tugia. But I'm going to stop it right there, and I'll make that section in a new video.